Henk Rogers, welcome to the Easy Allies podcast.
Good morning.
So you have a new book that's out April 1st, right?
April Fool's Day. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, I was actually just asking about that earlier. It's a fun day to put it out. Uh, The Perfect Game, Tetris from Russia with Love. And of course, it's got the Tetris story in there, but I'm about 200 pages in now. And it's not just that, right? It's basically like your full autobiography.
Well, it's not my full autobiography because I don't die in the book.
Sure, true, true.
So it's, I still have a ways to go. It's sort of my computer game career.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. Um, so yeah, like I said, I've been reading it. I went through all of Tetris Forever just last week to prepare. And of course, I read your story. I think the first time it's probably like 25 years ago or something in Game Over.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked with David Sheff to get some inside stories about Nintendo.
Yeah.
So.
And there's a whole chapter on just the
Yeah,
Tetris saga and
it
everything
was
there.
pretty good, except for the bit where we're drinking whiskey while we're playing Go. That never happens.
Got it. Yep. Yeah. I'd heard that there's some embellishments there for sure.
Yeah.
I honestly think it's one of the most interesting human stories in the business of video games. You know, just everything that has happened from front to back. It's very interesting to me, but we have to kind of get the audience caught up here because
Okay.
people who haven't read books about video game business
All right.
probably don't know that much of the perspective, right? So, what is kind of your quick cliff notes of your involvement in Tetris and what happened?
Well, okay. So the quick cliff notes is I went to university, majored in computer science, minored in Dungeons and Dragons. 6 years later, personal computers came out in Japan, and I created a computer game, in the Black Onyx, and it how can I say launched role-playing games in Japan. It was the number one game in Japan in 1984. Ended up self-publishing, so I had a publishing company at the end of that. And I wrote the first two games and then started traveling around the world looking for games to bring to Japan. I found Tetris at the Consumer Electronics Show in 1988. It was being published by a company called Spectrum Holobyte on personal computers. And I went off after all the rights. And, I got hooked on the game at Consumer Electronics Show, brought it back, it got everybody else hooked on the game. And so it was obvious that this was like a different kind of game. It
Yeah.
wasn't just the guys playing, it was the women. It was like there was no differentiation between age or gender or whatever. Everybody played this game.
Yeah, yeah, I love the detail when you said that Yamauchi at Nintendo had brought Miyamoto in to ask whether or not it would be a hit game, and he's like, "Well, all of your staff are playing it already."
Yeah, he asked what the words were, is it a great game?
Mm,
Yeah. And even a great game doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a hit. So
correct. Yeah.
but it was a great game. That's enough for Yamauchi to take action.
And then you worked with Nintendo of America to convince them to put it as a launch game on the Game Boy, and then
Right.
went to the Soviet Union of all places to make that happen.
Yeah, yes, I did. I got on a plane with a tourist visa to find Elorg. I had no idea. I didn't know anybody in Moscow. Didn't, of course, speak a word of Russian. It was an adventure game. I mean, a classic adventure game. Just step out into the hotel and, okay, now who do you talk to and what do you ask them? The hotel information desk had nothing. They absolutely had nothing. I spent a couple of days with taxis going from place to place looking for the Russian Go Association because I thought if I could find a Go player, I would have a friend. I did. Unfortunately, my friend never spoke any English, so he was used. I ended up hiring an interpreter, and she knew her way around immediately, which made me think that she was KGB.
Right, right. Yeah, and I actually just read the part where they sent two agents to your business in Japan while you were there.
Yeah. Oh my God, everybody was terrified. What the hell happened? Because I hadn't been able to call home because at the time it takes 8 hours to make a phone call out of the Soviet Union. And I didn't have time to sit by a phone for 8 hours. I did that like twice. And during that time, we were visited by two Russians who actually they were probably just there checking to see if I actually had a real business. They were checking
Right.
my story. The story was that I was a publisher of computer games in Japan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they found out, yep, there is in fact this a company called Bulletproof Software in Japan.
Great. And so yeah, so you had your version, the Famicom version that your team had built in Japan, and then you were
Mhm.
there to get the rights for the Game Boy version for Nintendo. And then that was basically when history was made, and things kind of go on from there. But I think we got just enough to give people a basic idea of who you
Yep.
are and what happened there. And now you have the Tetris company. That's essentially
I-
your company.
yeah, so I made a deal with Alexei Pajitnov. He is rightfully Mr. Tetris. He's the guy who created the game. If you want to call me something, you can call me Dr. Tetris because I kept the game alive all these years. But Yeah, so we did a handshake in 1993, I think it is, and because he believed that Elorg was going to say that he had no rights in Tetris and it was going to rip him off. And in fact,
Mm,
come 1995, when the rights supposedly revert to Alexei, they come out and say, yeah, he had no rights. It was work for hire, blah 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 blah. And so he and I then went to bat. I went to bat for Alexei, and we ended up settling with Elorg and made a 50-50 company called the Tetris Company, which I ran. And that worked for about 7 years, and then we had a meltdown, and I ended up buying them out.
yeah, it's
So
great.
now it's all Alexei and myself. I
It's
don't run the
amazing.
company anymore. My daughter Maya runs the company. She actually went to school and studied business. So she knows how to do business and market and brand manage. She knows all that stuff. I know how to make computer games.
Excellent. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of like the preamble. So to get everyone up to speed, this is what we're talking about today.
Okay.
Uh, what prompted you to write the book? Just because it's been told so many different formats in so many different ways,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
putting your own personal take on it.
So I was working on the script with Alexei and the script of the movie. And the movie has so much Hollywood in it that I wanted to set the record straight. And so
Mm,
I took the time. It was during COVID anyway. So I took the time to write the story of what actually happened, my trip to Moscow leading up to it, and so on. Basically, I wrote the story of the movie as it actually happened. And then somebody read it and said, you know what, this would be a book if it was a little bigger. And I said, well, I'm not going to rewrite the chapters I've already written and add water, so to speak, to make
right.
them, bloated. I'll write the before and after. And so I did. And so it became the story of my computer game career.
Excellent. And yeah, you touched on this as well, but before we get into Tetris, one of the things that I think is even easy for me to forget is that initial Black Onyx story and this amazing feat of introducing RPGs at all to Japan.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
yeah, I mean, it was a Herculean lift because what I didn't know, because I knew nothing back then, I didn't speak, read, or write Japanese. I didn't know that people in Japan didn't play Dungeons and Dragons. Whereas in the
mm,
US, there was Dungeons and Dragons. And so when Ultima and Wizardry came out, people already knew how to play a role-playing game. They didn't have to be taught how to play a role-playing game. And so when I made Black Onyx, I was making a game for people who had never played a role-playing game before. So it was a heavy lift. I
and
had
did
to,
you have those reference points? Like, were you aware of Wizardry and Ultima at that time, or
oh
was it
yeah,
just D&D?
I had played Wizardry.
Okay.
I had a friend who had a an Apple II, and I used to go to his house and play Wizardry. So I never did play Ultima, but Wizardry, and it was more my style of a role playing. I like to be in the game, so to speak, rather than have a little character walking around. Um, but I didn't. How can I say my story is different. I started with miniatures. If you play D&D on paper, you play with little lead figurines that you paint and so on. Those little lead figurines are actually represented in my game. You can graphically see little people and little monsters and so on. So I was much closer to the actual Dungeons and Dragons, if you will, in terms of the look of the game.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I was actually blown away when you were saying that you had actually created graphics for upgrading things like armor and stuff with the amount of memory that you had to work with.
this is t-shirt that I'm going to be wearing today.
Excellent.
This is so I'm in Japan to give a eulogy at a sort of celebration of life for one of the presidents of one of the software companies who passed away last December.
Hmm.
And they asked me to give a speech, so I'm here.
Wow. Um, yeah, but there's a lot so even with that reference for wizardry, there's still a lot that you basically were making up as you went. Like you essentially on your own had to like create the idea of like a health bar and all of that you're saying.
Yeah, the bar where you watch the damage happening. I didn't want see, in wizardry, it was all numbers. And you see a number on the screen, and the number doesn't really give you a feeling of like how much damage you've taken. You have to actually interpret the number and look at the number and say, I'm now at I don't know, I have like 8 hit points left, whatever. But the bar graph makes it very clear at a glance what everybody's situation is, all of the people in the and I think now it's ubiquitous. Everybody uses the that health bar graph um, for showing damage and hit points. And the other thing that's nice about it is you, as you get, like when you first meet a monster or a character on the other side, you see their bars. You know they're
Yeah.
bigger than you or smaller than you very, very quickly. And and as the fight progresses, you can see both sides turn, getting red. You know it's time to run if you're like Dave's got a long way to go and you've already taken too much damage. So it's a visceral, much more visceral experience, um, figuring out like where your character's health is at.
So clear up the timeline for me because this all seems like it must have happened incredibly fast because you have Black Onyx come out end of 83, right? And
Right.
then 84 it actually catches on, becomes the best-selling game in Japan.
Yep.
And then now like all of the like you essentially kickstarted a genre, right? Like Wizardry eventually comes over and then Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy were not that far behind.
Yeah, so then there was an explosion. It's like the Cambrian explosion of role-playing games in Japan. Hydlide and Ys and Dragon Quest and Dragon Slayer and Legend of Zelda. I mean, role-playing became like, I don't know what it is today, but it was 40% of the market from zero after Black Onyx.
Wild. Wild. Um, did any of those designers ever come to you and ask questions and pick your brain about things?
Um, no, because I didn't speak Japanese.
Okay. I
So
know you said you went out with drinks with a lot of different heads of the
yeah, yeah,
company and
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. I know I had developers move my code to other machines, and the programmer, came to me and said, "What does it mean? Do you know? Are you a programmer at all?"
No, not really.
Okay, okay. So there's a statement in BASIC called go to, and you go to it jumps to another part of the program. Basically, that's what go to. And in one part of the code, it says go to hell. And he asked, what does it mean? And because there's no place in the code called hell. So I said, no, it's just a joke. Hell is undefined variable, and so it causes a syntax error, which
Hmm.
reboots the game. What it meant is that the last of your characters has died, and then you get to that go to hell, and it reboots the computer, which means you have to load your character in again from
Oh,
wherever you
okay.
saved it the last time. So,
Amazing.
so that was, yeah, it was just a joke.
Um, One of the things that, Tetris Forever allowed me to do that I'd never done before, never even had an image in my head, was to see Alexi's like original version, the Electronica 60 version,
Yep.
and play that. And I was surprised by the fact that like I found it to be one of the most playable versions, even though the rules were different and so many things had changed, like it's actually like so perfect right then.
Whenever we go into design mode for Tetris, I make everybody go back to the original Tetris and say we start from there. We don't start from some later version of Tetris. We go back to the original because the original, like you said, it's a pure game. Um, the the main difference I would say is there was no soft drop. There's only hard drop,
Right,
and it 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 the game basically is different. So where you get points is the higher you drop a piece, the more points you make. Because for each line that it passes as you hard drop it, you get an extra point. So the best player would be drop, 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 drop. But of course, then you're making a mess at the bottom. And
right.
and
And lines was just a way to get rid of the mess at the time.
right, right. So there wasn't specifically like you're trying to clear lines. I added single, double, triple Tetris to the game so that people would think about, oh, I got to create lines or more line than one at a time. So that's my little contribution to the game.
How did that end up propagating into every version of Tetris, even before you kind of got full control?
Um, it was just a good, it was a good
Yeah.
idea. What can I say? And in the beginning, there was nobody telling anybody, no, like the Russians weren't telling anybody you can and cannot do this.
Right.
As a result, the Sega version on arcade and the Nintendo version on Game Boy are very different. And the Nintendo version, the as the block is falling, you control it and you decide where you are going to put it. Once it lands, it locks immediately. In the Sega version, you can hard drop, and once it's on the bottom, you can still rotate it. You can still
Yeah.
move it around. So basically, when you watch a Sega player play, it's hard drop, roll, hard drop, roll, hard drop, roll. The pieces look like they're rolling into place. And Nintendo, it's like you have to do it while it's in the air, so to speak. And I had to when I took over in '96, I had to make those two games become one.
Hmm.
And so we could have players that played from the Sega version and players that played the Nintendo version, and we put them all together. And so the way it works today, I created what is called super rotation. So while the piece is falling, it looks like it's Nintendo rotation, but once it's landed, it switches over and does Sega rotation. So it can do both.
Hmm.
So you can play it either way.
Um, how long was it before you actually got to see Alexi's version of the game? Because when you first saw it at CES, it was the Spectrum Holobyte version, right?
Yeah, that was that would have been early January of 88. And I went to the Soviet Union in the end of February 89. So 13, maybe almost 14 months.
Okay. But so you did get to see it when you went on that first trip?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, like after we had been in one meeting, Alexei and I immediately recognized each other as game designers. And then he wanted to show me all his games, and I wanted, we are communicating games. I was the first game designer that came from anywhere that he met.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
Amazing.
there's no such thing as a game designer in the Soviet Union. He was a mathematician. and he liked puzzles, but he wasn't a game designer per se.
Yeah. Um, Kind of similar to that. Why do you think that the NES and the Game Boy versions are so sticky? It's like I feel like yes, there's some level of a nostalgia for us that were around when it, kind of first became popularized, but then you see things like, Blue Scooty making the news and all of that, and it's like, how did this guy even get an NES?
Yes. Yeah, it's incredible. It's amazing. Yeah, there are a number of games that are like that live on the old consoles or the old, computers, and for some reason, they've outlived the platform. Sometimes I own several computers only because there's a game on that computer that I used to play, and that's why I still have that computer.
Yeah,
It hasn't made it to the modern machines. And yeah, you could say that though the games back then, less BS and more game. And today we're mesmerized by graphics and sound and all kinds of other things that are not really core to the game. Um,
right.
what can I say? It's sometimes simple is best.
Um, One of the details in there that one of my friends was actually curious to know more about was that you had to convince your wife's family to put up all of their property for you to make orders on the Famicom version.
Yes. I'm just plugging in my computer.
Oh, sure.
That wasn't me. That was my wife. She did that whole thing. She was definitely in the business with me from the very get-go because I didn't speak, read, or write Japanese now. So she did all of that. And um yeah, she knew what the whole turnaround looked like in terms of, you put in your order, pay Nintendo Cash, a couple of months later, the order actually comes through, it goes into distribution, and distribution pays you. So, I mean, the risk during manufacturing is that something could happen, and for whatever reason, you can't release the product. If you can't, then those cartridges become garbage. And that's what I was facing when I was in Moscow when Mr. Belikov I showed him my game, and he looked at it and he said, "We never licensed Tetris for console." I'm like, holy smokes, because I had $2 million. I had all of my in-laws' land as collateral for a loan. Uh, I was sweating some bullets at that moment.
Wow. But yeah, so they just essentially trusted your instinct on that game enough that
They
that
trusted
they
their
went for it.
daughter enough. I mean, their
Okay.
daughter is the one who, I didn't speak Japanese at the time. Oh no, by then I was speaking Japanese. Yes, that's true. But by that time the business had grown. I had 120 people working for me. So they had seen the company grow from me in a small bedroom programming to 120 people. So yeah, there was some indication that I actually had a business.
Nice. Um, yeah, kind of similar to you not being fluent in Japanese. You went to the Soviet Union without knowing knowing Russian, without really having any business being there. Um, do you do you credit like your childhood experiences to that kind of ability to do that? Because you did go over talking about how like when you're young, your family moved to New York and you didn't know the language, nobody knew your language. Do you think that had something to do with being able to
I think that
get into these bold situations?
sure. I mean, like, in fact, I like being a fish out of water, from time to time. Um, the fact that I was pretty good at speaking English to people who barely spoke English in Japan, because there's so many of them, that when I went to the Soviet Union, I spoke English to those guys. They were all surprised that they could understand me. Like I remember when I went over with Howard Lincoln and Arakawa, the second trip, um, they just weren't like communicating. The Russians were saying something and Howard wasn't getting it. Howard was saying something the Russians weren't. They were trying.
Hmm.
And Americans' way of trying to become understood is speak a little louder, which no, that's not the problem. The problem is you're using words they don't understand. You have to use simple words and pronounce them individually and not too quickly for people to understand what you're trying to say. And
Yeah.
they always thought it was magical, and somehow they thought I knew Russian because several times they tried to catch me by saying something to me in Russian. Be-
Yeah.
because they thought I was understanding what they were saying. And I remember during the negotiation at some point I said, "Stop your arguing, gentlemen. The answer is yes." Like, what? How do you know what we're talking about? So like, hey, we're in that part of the contract. Of course I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
love these details, man. Like just talking about paying for everything in cigarettes, the toilets overflowing at the airport.
yeah,
Just like
yeah.
just how different a place that was. But can we talk about you and this video camera? Like that's one of the things in Tetris Forever that blows my mind that you're running around with a video camera everywhere, both in the Soviet Union and even like within like Nintendo of America in the 80s, filming all this stuff. And it's just like it's
So
wild to me because
yeah,
it's not like smartphones now where everyone does it.
yeah, that's right. And yeah, so the deal was, well, first of all, I was supposed to be there as a tourist.
Right?
So having being a tourist without having a video camera or a camera was kind of suspicious, but I had a video camera, and I knew I was going to go on the adventure of my life, and I wanted to be able to share it with the people back in Japan. So yeah, I went. I carried that. I didn't do it during the negotiations or anything like that, but I did go sightseeing
Yeah.
in between meetings. So yeah, yeah, I enjoyed that part of it. I guess I'm definitely a photographer. I wasn't a videographer ever. It just takes too much time to do post-processing. Um, but yeah, I wanted to show everybody and yeah, those tapes are gold, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really like surprised to see especially the Nintendo of America footage because nowadays you go to Nintendo of America like you can't take any kind of photos past the front
Did
desk,
I?
you know?
Did inside Nintendo? I don't remember.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the footage is in the Tetris Forever documentaries.
Oh,
Like
okay.
where all the gameplay counselors are in the cubicles and everything.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, 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 yeah. I
And the
remember that.
merchandise, so they had the old merchandise room and stuff there.
Yep, yep, yep. And I remember there was a like a sign up above the guys answering the phone saying how many seconds before somebody got their phone answered.
Mm,
Like average phone time, and it would go up and down depending on how many. They needed to keep it below so many seconds.
right.
It was what an organization. It was like amazing.
Um, and then later on, I remember at one point, people had talked as if you had rescued Alexei from the Soviet Union when helping him move to the States. Is that an like accurate description, or is that more of like an embellishment?
Um, it's how can I say it's both accurate and an embellishment. Yes, it happened. I mean, I basically he brought him out of the Soviet Union a number of times, sometimes to Japan, sometimes to like CES and so on. So he'd been to the States and Japan. That was a kind of a regular thing. And then we did the same thing for the rest of his family, and then they never went back.
Right.
So it wasn't like we were helping them escape or something like that, but yeah, I mean, it definitely changed their lives. And his son says has said to me, "Thank you so much. You totally changed my life. If I was still in the Soviet Union or in Russia today, oh, what a what a hellhole that's become.
Mhm. And then what was it like when you two finally had the chance to like really like work together and figure out what was next for Tetris?
Yeah, so we've always worked together and we've always butted heads. We're very different. I like rock, he likes classical music. He likes to plan things, I like to adventure. We went on a trip to Europe together, got a Euro pass, and the way we did it is day one, you make a plan and we go where you want us to stay. Day two, I pick a random direction, we go there and we have an adventure. Day three, you plan. Day four, we adventure, and so on. We did all of Europe that way, and it was amazing. It was so fun because, he was out of his element for half the time, and I was like, oh, okay, okay. Well, it's nice to have things in place. And when it comes to Tetris, I would say that his background is mathematics and puzzle. So he can handle complications like not being able to see pieces. He
Mm,
wants to make Tetris on a cylinder where the cylinder spins and half the pieces are on the back of the cylinder. It's kind of, well, to me, is as soon as you hide pieces from the player, then you're making the game too complicated.
yeah.
It's like there's no sport where the ball or the player disappears from time to time.
Right. Yeah, well, I just played Weltris for the first time last weekend, and
Oh,
that
okay.
was a trip. Like it's like you go around the corner, and all of a sudden, like your controls shift on you, and
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
interesting project for sure.
Yeah, and I went to something called the Outer Net in London. That's probably a video somewhere recently. It's a space like a giant cube of LEDs, and you're standing at the bottom of it. And then people use their phone to connect, and then so you get seven players with seven pieces floating around, and they go around. The line clearing happens on one side, but you can actually move the piece all the way around to the back side.
Wow.
So it's like you're in. I guess they could have done Welters in that space, going, which would have been insane.
Um, and yeah, then like in the late 90s and early 2000s, you guys really kept on top of all of these emerging technologies. You got Tetris on things before they were released, basically, right? So you had the keychain Tetris, and then you had the mobile phones and the App Store, and the VR, Tetris Effect was there pretty quickly. What was it
Yeah.
like just like keeping an eye on everything that was happening so fast?
No, no, as if it's got a screen and a controller, we put Tetris on it. The story is we sold more Tetris than Nintendo sold Virtual Boy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We made distribution bought 150,000 copies of Tetris and I think 140,000 Virtual Boys.
Wow.
So we outsold Nintendo on that one. Yeah, but I mean, that's the business. We have to find all the wherever screens go. We need to make sure Tetris is there.
Yeah. And what do you like for things like Tetris Effect and Tetris 99? Like, are you surprised to still see people coming up with just these radically new ideas? And then I guess conversely, like what kinds of things don't make the cut?
Um, what things? Okay, first of all, I'm not surprised. You could say pleasantly surprised that you can have a game where 99 players are playing at the same time. That's like, I could barely think of four or six players. And I did think about like having team play where seven players play versus seven players and they have slightly different roles. But I mean, this Tetris 99 it's brilliant and it's ballsy because, traditionally, if you have a computer game, getting 99 people in a room is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. So they did a lot of heavy lifting there. Um, Things that don't make the cut are things that I don't know, break the rules of Tetris, basically. If somebody, you know, looks at it and says, that's not Tetris, okay, it's probably not in the game then. And anything too complicated, the game, Tetris is a casual game. If you make it too complicated, now you're taking it out of the casual game realm, and then I have a problem, or we have a problem. So, yeah, we test every game, make sure that it's playable. We have a guideline that says that you have to be able to do this and this and this and this in Tetris. Um, and we say, look, you can try new things, but if we test it and we don't like it, our tester don't like it, then we're going to reject that feature.
Yeah. And that's basically your role now with Maya's running the company and you guys kind of evaluate and see what comes through in those kinds of things.
Not even. I have a brother who works in the company who does that now.
Okay.
He knows what's Tetris and what's not Tetris. So he makes sure that people follow the guideline. Um, I am looking at newer and different projects. I am looking at, for example, um, somebody has been working on post-traumatic stress syndrome
Hmm.
and how Tetris works there. And that's interesting. So then I would get involved. Somebody wants to do drone Tetris. Well, that's interesting and new. And so I go back into design mode. How can we best use drones to put Tetris in the sky? So, if it comes to doing new and revolutionary things, I'm not afraid to try new things. As a licensee, the way it works is, by the way, if you create a new thing and it really works, that belongs to us. That's all your bases are belong to us. Whatever you create. Um,
Yeah.
because we don't want to have a situation where one licensee says to another licensee, "Hey, we invented that. You can't use that in your version." That kind.
Right. Got it.
So that's to prevent that. So anything that anyone's ever created that's an enhancement to Tetris can be used by all future Tetris licensees.
Got it. Well, I'm getting a signal to wrap it up. So thank you so much for joining us. Well, you got one more thing.
I would like to mention that I spend almost no time on the game business now. I'm fighting climate change. I had a near-death
Yeah.
experience. You'll read that in sort of the end of the book. Um, I I know that we're going to fix climate change. We have all the technology, we have the money. All we need is the willpower,
Yeah.
and it's just a decision. And I'm making the decision. If nobody else is going to make the decision, I'll make the decision. The decision is that we're going to fix climate change, and we're going to do so by, I like to say 2045, but if we slip a little and have it be 2050, that's okay too. We are going to do this. And people ask me if I have hope, and I say, no, I do not have hope. I have determination.
Excellent. Yeah, and your determination has definitely made all of this happen. You had so many chances to have lost those Tetris rights, and now you have all of them. So I'm glad to have you working on that. Everybody, read The Perfect Game. Like I said, this is one of the most fascinating stories in the history of video games. You've just, your reputation precedes you, Hank. So many people have said so many good things about you and your honesty and your fairness in dealings and just your warmth. And there's a lot of other details, crazy stories in there with how you met President Yamauchi at Nintendo, the copyright gambit that Tengen made. You invented the NES Max, which I did not know before this book. So yes, everyone, get this book, check it out, get this game history from Hank's perspective. And thank you again, Hank, for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.